name's Claire Perry-Louise. I'm a coach for the Internet Business School and have been since 2013, I think, or 12, ages ago. In fact, I found a picture yesterday of me in my Internet Business School get-up where we used to have t-shirts, like a red t-shirt. I sent it to Simon last night. I was like, remember this? It was so long ago. And then since then, I've gone on and written a book about membership sites, and I really got into the fact that membership sites are just the tool that you can use to build things like relationships, ongoing income. I don't like to use the word passive income as such because nothing's particularly passive unless you've got some affiliate links flowing in and you're not having to do anything for them. And then I realized that actually at the heart of everything, you need to be building a community. And that has taken me on a wide pathway of speaking engagements around the world and workshops, working with corporates. I worked with Facebook when they decided that they wanted to make their platform all about building community, and they put billions of pounds into Facebook groups. And because I've been in community building for such a long time, I'd obviously gathered a lot of knowledge since 2013. And so they work with lots of community builders like me to understand how you build community. And so I was involved with them while they were building out their ever-evolving Facebook groups platform. So, and all the features and all the things they're trying to do to understand community building so much more. And it's my belief that community will become the core of all businesses in the future, because really at the heart of it, it's about relationships and just creating those ongoing relationships that build trust and we've got so many options nowadays, and we want to go with people that we already know, or we trust them, or we've got to like them over a period of time. And so it's a really important part of business as far as I can see. So hi Marilina, you've raised your hand. If you've got a question, pop it in the chat box and I will answer it for you. So this is a guy called David Hyatt, and he set up a factory in Cardigan in Wales because they shut down the factory in Wales, which used to produce jeans for the likes of Marks and Spencer, etc., etc. And then they decided that obviously that it was more cost efficient if they shipped it out of the country. And basically what happened in this small country, in this small town in Wales, half of the people who lived in Cardigan, or even more, lost their jobs because they were all around this jeans factory. And so he and his wife set out, they bought the jeans factory, and they are the founders of Hyatt Denim, and they specialize just in jeans. And he has a lot of great things to say. And he says, if you can't build a community, you aren't going to build a great brand. And his brand is deep into community. It's deep into looking after actual people and who are living in close proximity. And that can be one way to describe community. But there's lots of other ways, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment. So don't worry, Marilina, it's fine. So I've had lots of challenges since I became an entrepreneur in 2013. But for me, this question has given me the most issues. And that is me. I used to cry after every party. I'm like, oh, I just couldn't take it. It was just too emotional. But that's how I felt several times. If you're an entrepreneur, can you relate to that picture? Have you ever felt like that? Definitely. Marilina's like, yes, got her hand up. We relate to this, don't we? I know, hopefully some of you relate to it because it's not just me. That's what it's like. So, and this is the question: what is a community? Like, what is it? Let me know in the comments what you think it is. Like, what is it? Like, what is community? Because it's very, very difficult to define. And over the years, people are like, well, what do you mean by community? What's a community? Do you mean people who I live nearby, or do I mean something else? And it's super, super difficult to define. So I want to know, what does community mean to you? So if you have got any thoughts on this, yes, Neville, gathering of like-minded souls. That is super. That's a great definition. Yes, Anwar, common interests and common values, definitely. Yes, as well, it can mean so many things. Lorena says a group of people who gather together to do activities. a group of people you can relate to. Yeah, I love these definitions, and what it means to you is super important. And there's different, community can be so wide ranging because, like I say, it can be people who are in close proximity to you physically, or it can be connections that we build over line. A group of people with common interests and shared experiences. Yes, great definition, Mahari. A bunch of human creatures sharing things, ideals. Yes, definitely. Now these, oh, sorry, Vari, sorry. Oh no, I'm just going to stop pronouncing names. I can't keep it up. So I'm going to talk about this because it's all very nice thinking about building community, but we need to, in many occasions, if we're going to build this in the context of businesses, we need to be thinking about how we can monetize this community. So here's some examples, like, is this community? Like maybe it is, maybe it isn't. So this is one of my mentors, Alexi Panos. So you can see like her Instagram account, 145,000 people on there. Is that a community? Is it? Is it not? And this depends what you think about what community is. And I'm going to share with you what people get confused over in a minute. Soul School with Alexi, it's not open anymore, but that's a Facebook group. Is that community? Well, I would argue, and I would say that the Facebook group is more of a community than the Instagram, because some of these things you put in the comments about having common interests and those kind of things, and having shared values, all those kind of things happen in the Facebook group. But anybody could follow her on Instagram. Are they part of her community? And there's a distinct difference. And then we've got her podcast. Is that a community? Okay, so we're thinking about a podcast. How does that work? It's from me or the person doing the podcast going out. Now, there's not communication. Does that mean there's no engagement? No, it doesn't mean there's no engagement because people are listening. And arguably, if you're listening to a podcast, you've got somebody in your ears and they are talking to you directly, as opposed to the noise of Instagram and everything. So maybe it's a deeper way to build community by using a podcast. So exactly, Anwar, followers don't necessarily mean community, because we don't know that those 145,000 people have shared values. So some might follow her because they like looking at her baby pictures. Some might follow her because she's always wearing cool clothes and she used to be a model, and people follow her because they think, oh, that's inspiring. Some might follow her because of her business thing. So do we all have the same values? Probably not, because we've got different ideas. Yes, Anwar, groups are more likely to be united in their common values and experience, definitely. Yes, very abstract. So let's see what defines a community. So my definition to help you along here is that a community is an engaged and connected group of individuals in pursuit of mutual interests or a shared commonality. So that's what you've been saying in the chat. So you're all going to get stars this morning for getting that definition. So that would be a definition of community. Now, what brings people together? So shared identity, e.g. Lululemon, they brought people together over their brand, their yoga brand. They had brand ambassadors going out, creating their own mini communities or micro communities from their overall brand. So they've got a shared identity. Dog owners, shared identity. Go for a walk, talk to all the dog owners. You've got something in common. It starts conversation up. Other things that bring people together, purpose. So if you're behind a certain charity, and you've got a shared purpose, or you want to save the whales, you can come together because you want to save the whales, and you really, that's your purpose in life. And then you've got something in common with the people who also want to do that. You might have a shorter thing, like a shared intention. So a fundraiser, raise funds for the school or something like that, and you can come together around that. You might have an objective. So you're going to run the marathon and you're going to come together and you're going to help each other through that process. Or if you go to something like BNI, which is a business networking group, you've got an objective that you want to go and you want to find people to do business with. Other things that brings people together are interests, passions, hobbies. So if you're doing paddle boarding, there's lots of paddle boarding groups out there, so you can go and join those communities. And then sometimes there's drivers that bring people together, and they push people together. They don't really know they needed to be pushed together. So there might be things like disasters, like 9/11, obviously brought people together. It built connections. COVID is another example. It's brought people together who necessarily wouldn't be in contact. Maybe you're more in contact with your neighbours. And definitely when we were having that period in the UK where every Thursday evening we were clapping for the NHS, that obviously brought people together and onto the streets and felt that shared, together we're in this together. And that's what you're trying to do. And yeah, AAA too. As I was thinking, you were giving me another example, like AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. Again, that's a shared identity. So before you start to build a community, I want you to be clear, and this is really, really important. So it would be very easy for me to give you a presentation. This is what you need to do, A, B, C. But I really want you to think about this first. Like, think about what community means to you, and then think about what you want to achieve if you're going to build this community. Because it's really, really important that you know that, because if you don't know what you want to achieve, you're never going to achieve it. So this is what I've been kind of alluding to. Side note, I was looking for the word example for my slides, and I got eggs, and it made me laugh because I was thinking, you've got to be super clear on what you want. So I wanted example, and I got eggs. There you go. Sad face. Make sure you know what you're looking for. So you might actually want to build brand awareness as opposed to a community. So brand awareness is, I said last week in the webinar as well, about there's traditionally 7 touch points someone will have with you before they start to do business with you. So it could be a newsletter, it could be a social media post, it could be a Facebook Live, it might be seeing you speak at an event. Do you see what I mean? There's like loads of different ones. A podcast episode, did I say that? But different kinds of things. Now they're building brand awareness, and that's why brands work well, because people get to see the brand and then they trust it because they see a lot of it and they believe that if it's seen a lot and known a lot and there's money behind it, then it can be trusted. So you might not want to build a community. It might just be that you're trying to build brand awareness. Elaborate on your question, Joseph. What if I already have a community which I did not realize before? And again, it depends. It depends. So one of the other definitions of community, or one of the ways you know you've got community, is where the people within that community will help each other out or answer questions for each other without you as the leader needing to be there to facilitate that. Okay, so that's how you know you've got true community. So when you're looking at that Instagram page where you saw Alexi, now all her followers on there, the other followers won't be helping out other followers and saying, why don't you do this? Because they're not connected. They're just part of a following. So it's more of a following on Instagram. And people talk about build your Instagram community. It's more like build your brand awareness. Some Instagram followings and influencers do have real communities who really feel connected, but they feel connected because they are probably connecting elsewhere outside of Instagram. Maybe they're in a Facebook group as well. So in Romania, Joseph says he's been with the Handicap Association for 30 years. And your wife is handicapped since before you met. So you've got a community there because you've got people in that community who have a shared connection. They've got shared experiences, and that's really important. Shared experiences are one of the fundamentals that you need to do if you want to build a community. So community, like I say, you're helping each other outside of what's happening at leadership. So someone will lead a community. So I lead a community called Like-Hearted Leaders, but within the times I create space for us all to come together, conversations and business and helping each other out is going on without me being part of that. And that's why you know you've got a true community. And in your case, Joseph, if you're in the same community as well, it's even deeper, because if you can bring people together physically, it builds community much quicker. So I have a community, like I say, called LHL, and I was on a course back in August, and some of the members from my community were at this course, and we were in physical proximity because we're in a barn actually in Wales, and we are now meeting up next week. And because we met for the first time in August, but because we were together for 3 or 4 days, it was a deeper connection, because you are in proximity and there's stuff that happens when physiology happens when you're in the same space. So this is your first question, and I really want you to think about it. Why do you want to build a community? What is it you want to do from it? And if it's brand awareness, that's great. And I'm going to share some of the things you can do in a moment with community, and maybe help you out if you don't know why you want to build a community. Anwar says, would it be good to have an internet business school community, say via a Facebook group? It doesn't exist. I have done it in the past. It's not really where Simon wants to go with the business, I don't think. We have had different pop-up groups in the past. So it might be a good idea, but it's not Simon's sort of, it's not part of what he does, because he has some internal communities as well, and some mentorship programs, and that's where the community is built within there. So, but yeah, I think it'd be a good idea. But I'm always persuading Simon, let's do a community. He's like, no, Claire, stop it. So I want you to think about these considerations if you are going to build a community. So like I keep saying, decide on why you want to build a community. And in a moment, I'm going to share, push him, come to my community, Anwar, you probably like it. Decide on why you want to build a community is really important, like I say, because it will help push through, because building a community is hard work. And it takes time and energy, and I'm going to share some of the things you need to do if you want to build your own community in a moment, but so don't ever forget that. Then I want you to think about, as I called it, the audience test. So is your audience a right fit for community building? So I have an audience who are leaders, who have who are purpose driven, who are open to being vulnerable with each other. They are consistent. They turn up week after week after week. All of those things, they are right fit for community building. They are happy to open up themselves, and to they need to be open-minded in my community, all of those kind of things, because that's the way we roll in there. But if you're building a different, or if you're going to build a community for marathon runners, it's a right fit for community building, because you've got a shared, clear purpose, and you've got a goal, and it's super, super clear. If you set up a community for business owners, it's not clear enough. It's not niche enough. Like, why would a business owner go into that? People need to know what the value is for them to be part of something. The other thing that's really important is that what is your time frame? Because if you're looking for results by next week, community takes time, like building relationships. So if you are on, many of you are regulars on here, and you are showing up quite a lot. Now, you will see me quite a lot over the last year. Now, if you think about how much you knew about me in January and how much you know now in December, you will have a different perspective, and you will have got to know me a bit more. So if we met in person, you'd feel like you knew me a bit more. Now, that wouldn't happen after our first webinar. So if you need something with quick results, community is not for you. It's something that you can do as a side project and build up your other things at the same time. It's not a quick result. You need to think about how you'll monetize it. And I'm going to share about my community in a moment and how I monetize that, but just think about these considerations for community building. So Louise says, what is the difference between a network group and a community? So a network group could be a community. So, for example, my community is essentially networking, because we meet, we talk, we explore business, we explore personal things, we brainstorm, etc., etc. And then within the group, people do business with each other. However, we are much more of a community because we all share similar beliefs, because we came from a shared experience. So my community started after the majority of us attended an online course. And because we attended that particular online course, we already had a set of shared values which drew us to do that course in the first place. So if you have a network group, you could have a network group so I went to a network group in Exeter. I don't necessarily feel connected to the other people in that room because I've probably just met them once. If I keep going to the same networking group, I might build a little bit of a relationship with them, but I don't feel I'm part of that community. However, if the network group then added on a space for us to carry on the conversations between network meetings, so for example, if they had a Facebook group and they create a space and then the leader of that network group facilitated conversations. So I mean, they say, Claire, have you spoken to Bob? He's really interested in building a community for his business. And then made conversation or shared things that we all felt connected to. So if we've all got, it was a network group for entrepreneurs solo entrepreneurs, that starts to bring out that shared identity. So we've got that shared identity. We're all solo entrepreneurs and we work from home. And then you, like I said, when you go for a walk with the dog, straight away you have a conversation starter. So solo entrepreneur, conversation starter. So then it turns from a networking group maybe into community if the leader will start facilitating conversations, but will make me build trust with other people within that group. So it's kind of a difficult way to explain it. I don't know if that helps, Louise, but it could be a community, it might not be. So hopefully that does explain it. There's another group. David said something. Is it similar to a peer group? Maybe, like a peer group, I guess, it's just a way of defining something, I guess. So peer group, or it could be like a mentorship group or that kind of thing. So I want you to think about what your business objectives are, and then think about how does building a community support those goals. So that is what we're going to look at, business objectives. And here we go. So I've shared these before, but in case you've forgotten, it's called the SPACE model. So here are the 5 business outcomes of community. So we have support. So that might be if you create an online product, or a bit like Internet Business School, you could have a Facebook group which can support people in between webinars, etc., etc. So it can be a support basis. Now, if, for example, so I have Kajabi software, and Kajabi has a Facebook group, and they offer support to the people who have Kajabi. Now, being part of that group is really, really important because it helps you answer questions that you might have around the product, etc., etc. And it's a really good bonus for being part of the Kajabi because you've got access to people who can help you, who could maybe suggest freelancers who might be able to help you, all of those kind of things. So it's a really good sort of selling point. If you buy this product, you'll also get this support group. And there was, I remember Digital Marketer, they used to sell online courses, probably still do sell online courses, but they also have a digital marketing support group on Facebook, and people wouldn't want to stop paying their subscription to Digital Marketer because they didn't want to lose the subscription bar. So, and then there is product innovation. So a bit like similar kind of thing with this Kajabi and the Facebook group. So Kajabi can look into this Facebook group and people say, I hate it when I tried to make a landing page and this happens, or how do you do this? Or we need easier email templates. And whatever it might be, Kajabi can look into that group, which has got users of their product, and think about how they can improve and make their product better. And they do this all the time by using Community. So that's an example. Another outcome is acquisition. So building awareness. So you build up trust by sharing regularly, making consistent content, helping people who, and you're warming up your audience. So if someone wants to buy your product and they are a part of your community and they've seen things that you've done in the past, they're more likely to buy from you. So if you're a coach, you might be sharing tips and things that you've done with your clients and resources and all of those things. And it builds up that trust before people are ready to connect with you. Another business outcome is contribution. So for example, Airbnb works because of the community, because it's a crazy idea to think that someone would rent out their home to a complete stranger. So what happens is Airbnb is the, it's like that island between the house and the person who needs the house. Now, these two people don't trust each other because they've never met and they've got no reason to trust each other. But in the middle, we have got Airbnb, and Airbnb have the ability to do reviews, make people super hosts. People can build trust. So I trust Airbnb because they are monitoring what's going on. And they had an issue a year or so back, or maybe longer, where somebody had gone and trashed the house and had a big party, and they had to re-look into what was going on with their platform. So that's another example. And then engagement. So building relationship. Community is a great way to build relationships. So they're the different business outcomes. And obviously there's things like membership fees. So my community has got membership fees. So that's a recurring income that I get from it. So, and if you have like I say, like a membership product, so a product that people pay for on a regular basis, then Community can help support that by ensuring people are retained on that membership product, because if people feel they're going to miss out if they leave, they're not going to want to leave. So whatever you're doing, if you're thinking, okay, I want to build a community, I want you to define what success would look like to you. Because if success is having 50 people in a Facebook group, then you'll know when you've hit that point. But if your success is selling 10 products from members of your community and you sell 0, you're going to realize it's not working for you. So it's really important that you think about, what does success mean to you? Maybe success is feeling that you matter because people are within your community and you're teaching them and they're learning from you. And that's fine. But know what it is you want to get out of building a community, because if you don't, it's going to feel really, really tricky, and it's going to feel like hard work, and it's going to be an issue. So I'm just going to share with you how I built a community from scratch. And so this is something that's open to all of you. And it's definitely something that you need to look about things that you're involved with already. And if you are a community builder or somebody who's interested in it, you need to be that leader, and you need to step up and take the role to bring people together. So this is just, there's over 50 people in my community, and so many of them turn up every single Friday for our meetup, and they talk to each other, and they're across the world. And like some of these pictures, when I see these pictures here, and I think, gosh, if I hadn't stood up and said, right, I'm going to do this, these people would not be connected anymore. And these people have done business with each other, supported each other through the good times and the bad times and all sorts. So real magic happens when you bring people together. So I'm going to share that in a moment, Anwar. And there's lots of places where you can build community, and I'm going to share in a moment. So I won't answer your question. If I don't answer it properly, let me know. But this is how I did it. So the first thing I did was I connected people with a shared identity, purpose, or background, or in my case, it was a shared experience. So we all attended a course called the Keyboard CEO, which was put on by the Do Lectures, and that's the brand that David Hyatt, who's in the first slide, also founded. So we all attended a course together. And so if you follow his brand, you've got certain values because of the way that they built their brand. And so people who did the course were coming from the same mindset. They were all working for themselves, entrepreneurs, purpose-driven, etc., etc. And so this is how I did it. I brought those people together. So if you're going to bring people together, you need to create a space. So this is one of the most important parts of community building. So like Anwar says, you can do it in a Facebook group, but in my case, and the way I created this community, we had been on a course which was run on Zoom because it was during COVID. And during that course, we had breakout rooms where we chatted. And I asked the course creators, is it okay to do this first? And I said, can I connect with the people on the course and see if anybody wants to carry on the conversations that we'd started on the course? So the space we'd been using already was Zoom. And so what I did is I got in contact with people who were on the course. Now, the course had a Facebook group, and with permission, I went into that Facebook group and said, if anybody would like to carry on having conversations and connecting with each other and supporting each other, I'm going to start two Zoom calls a week for an hour each where we can come together and chat. And then I went about making it happen. So it didn't just happen just like that. So I opened up a Zoom account so I could have an hour, and I connected with lots of people who I'd met. I shared the information, I tagged them, etc., etc. And then I brought them together. And when I brought them together, I realized that people want to talk to each other and get to know about each other. And so I formulated different questions that I put to the group, and I made space for people to have one-to-one conversations. So I helped create conversations. So I had the space. So Facebook groups is one place that you can do this. Zoom is how I did it. Now I'm going to share in a moment why Zoom works really well. But once you get people into the space, so if you bring people into a Facebook group, you need to create and maintain those conversations, because otherwise they will die away because people are busy. So that's why you do things like tag people in or send them direct messages. Or when I started up one of my Facebook groups years ago, I would create little tiny posts celebrating people's birthdays, or if they join the group, I'd do a whole post sharing their website. It used to take me ages, probably 20 minutes per one, but it brought people together and it made them feel like they were special in that space. So you need to maintain conversations. And then to create community, like we've been talking about earlier on, you need to deepen those connections. You need to get people to open up to each other. And depending on what you're trying to do, there's different ways to do that. But I did that through questions. I created questions that would connect people to each other. So one example would be, I would say, share your life story with your partner in 90 seconds. And once you start doing things like that, you start to realize and understand more about the individual. And that's what's really, really important, that you understand that people are more than just their username on Facebook. They're actually people with real lives living their own journey. And if you can bring people together in a deeper way, then community will start to happen, because people want to connect with other people. It's part of being a human. And then you need to be consistent and give people a reason to show up. So to start with, I did Zoom calls twice a week, on Thursdays at 4:30 and Fridays at 8:30. And I did that and did that and did that. And then I said, I'm going to check in after a month and see what people want to do. Do you want to meet up every week? Now, the people on the Thursday call said, oh, we'd like to meet up once a month. And the people on the Friday call said, no, we want to keep in contact. We want to meet every Friday. So the Thursday dropped to once a month. And after the first month, 2 people showed up on the Thursday. And so I dropped the Thursday and everyone moved to the Friday. And so it's interesting, it's always an experiment. There's no wrong or right way to do it. You just need to experiment with the people that you're trying to connect and see what will work for them. And this is what I was saying about bringing people together and having different spaces. So there's this thing called synchronous, and that is where things happen in real time. So Zoom is a synchronous experience because you are there and talking to each other in real time. So everybody who's in that room or on that call is talking to each other and connecting in real time. Whereas something like Facebook or WhatsApp is asynchronous. So I could put a comment reply now, and then somebody might not reply to it until the next day or later on. And so it's not real-time conversation. And so Zoom worked really well because it brings people together and having real conversations. And then there is Kajabi, which is where I created masterclasses, which people within the community would create a masterclass and they would, then I'd upload it to Kajabi so people could access that later on. And it's just basically finding different ways to get people to connect. So you could have a Facebook group as well, like Anna was saying. We have a WhatsApp group as well, which is asynchronous. And it means that people can have conversations outside of the synchronous Zoom meetings. So it's always looking at things like that. So there are other ways to build community. You can use a platform like Circle, and Circle is, again, just another platform you can look at. So there are different ways to bring community, and I'm going to share a few more. Thank you, Avari. You can probably catch the replay. So this is how LHL became a community, or became a business. So when you're thinking about monetizing your community, if you fulfill a need for your audience and add value to their lives, they would definitely stick around. So my community started off as a free community. I did it because I wanted to bring people together. And then because people got so much value from it, they actually then started to show up regularly and realize that it was actually something that was worth paying for. And so because of that, they decided to basically all club together and say to me, Claire, you need to be charging us for this. And so I ended up turning it into a completely paid community, and they said, right, we're going to pay you a membership fee. And that's what happened. And now it's growing and growing, and I get a regular passive income from it. Well, not passive but as in it's a regular recurring income. So it's a great example of if you actually provide value to people, then they will show up regularly, and then they will start paying you for that, which is probably one of the best models you can get, because you can definitely build on it once you've got a working model which is helping people achieve the things they want to achieve, like grow their businesses, connect with other people who've got like-minded businesses, and all of those things. So that's, which is pretty amazing about NHL. So I'm going to share with you the 5 key principles of community building before I finish up. If you've got any questions, do let me know in the comments. So principle 1 is build before you need it, because you, like I said, community doesn't happen overnight. So you definitely want to start building it before you need it. Start building those relationships before you need it, which applies to anything that you're doing. Because if you suddenly think, right, I'm going to build a community overnight and I need to monetize it, it's not going to happen. So you need to build those connections before you need to monetize it. Engagement is definitely more important than the size, because my community is probably over 80% engaged. It brings in way more money than my Instagram community, which arguably, like I said, is not a community. It's got 1,000 people on it, say, but in comparison, a smaller amount of money monetizes more easily because it's more engaged and people really want to be there. So don't get too worried if you haven't got thousands and thousands of people, because it can still be really, really great business model. Values are your foundation. So have a strong foundation, because they will attract the right people to you. And if you haven't got those and you don't know what you really value, you will attract people who aren't a right fit for your business. And so make sure you share your values regularly, have those highlighted. So if you create, that's why I say, for example, with Facebook groups, they have spaces to share, there's a descriptions bit and there's rules and regulations, because they're really, really important to make sure that you build a really strong community, which is got and attracting the right kind of people. You need to align your business with your community strategy. So if you put lots of time and effort into building a community, but it's not making any money, you're going to get burnout with it and you're going to wonder why you're doing it. So my community, like I say, it went from free, but now it's part and it turned into a business. And now there's money there and funds and time to grow that community. And so when we started off, it was just on Zoom. And then later on, like I said, I added on the Kajabi platform. I put people's courses on there, their masterclasses that they created. So you get creating assets then for your community all the time. So you could then sell off your masterclasses if you wanted to as products and that kind of thing. But that kind of built over time. So these things always build over time. You don't necessarily get it straight off, like I've been saying. So I'm just going to share with you the 3 levels of community strategy. So we've got business level. So what business outcomes do you want to achieve? So like I said, it might be brand awareness, and then maybe the community is not the right word. It's just building content, sharing content, engaging, that kind of thing on social media. Maybe you want more sales. So if you sold one product and then you kept those relationships going with the person who'd bought that product, and then you have a second product, they're more likely to buy from you with that second product because you've kept in contact with them. They're not going to look elsewhere. So that's another great way to monetize your community. You can use it for product feedback, like I explained, and improve customer satisfaction and growing your network, because you're having those ongoing relationships. Because if someone buys something for you once and then you're not in contact with them, you're not going to know how they experienced that product. You're not going to have an opportunity to sell to them again, all of those kind of things. So what initiatives are you going to do from a community perspective to achieve these business objectives? So maybe if you want to grow brand awareness, maybe you want to start a podcast, because like I say, it's a way to engage with people because they engage with you by listening. So it's still engagement, even though it's not two-way engagement as such. It's not like I was saying, like a Zoom happens in the here, now, we're talking now, but it's like a podcast, people can listen to you at any time, but it does build brand awareness. And with my podcast, someone said they were listening to it in America and they'd spent all day listening to me and they felt like they really knew me. And so it's a really quick way to build community. And then there's a tactical level. So what will you do to make sure it's a success? So if you just have community and don't add content, or you don't engage people, like I was saying, create those conversations, then what's going to happen is people are just going to drop away. So maybe if you're really invested in building community, then you definitely need to get a community manager or survey the community, see what's going on, offer more value, all of those kind of things. And Anwar, what did you say? My community meetings run once a week and they're an hour. And the format is I do different questions and create conversations. And the agenda changes all the time because I feel into what's present within the community and what people need to learn. So thank you, Louise. Yeah, most off-putting, I can tell you. I'm sorry for my off-putting. So maybe we could stop the chat in the comments. Not to everybody else though. Thank you, Louise. So principle 5, exist to serve and build human connection, because that's what's really important. It's about bringing people together and serving. So we don't want to be sold out. We don't want to be spammed with things. It's just not how we build connection. We want to give value to each other. And that is part of being human, and that's what community building is about. It's about seeing the person behind the screen and understanding that they're a human trying to do their best and looking for answers. And it's a really important part of community building. Now, you need to be the lighthouse, okay? So not everyone's for you. You put your light out there and you shine your light and you say, these are my values, this is what I value, this is what my purpose is, and I'm going to put my light out. You don't get boats sort of chasing around looking for the lighthouse, do you? They're doing their thing and the lighthouse gives their light out and it's there for the boats that need it. So always be the lighthouse, don't chase, just put your values out, spread your light out there, and you will attract the right people to you. Now, you can't be for everybody, and that's great, because you don't want to be for everybody, because it wouldn't be a community. So the people that you repel are the people that aren't for you anyway. Not everyone's going to like you, and that's brilliant, because that is what is important. So you definitely need to lead with passion, but remember that your community chooses you. So they choose you to lead them, and you can lead with passion. And if people drop off, so some people, occasionally people leave my community, and that's because they've had what they need from their community and they're on to a different journey now. So that is fine. Lead with passion, and then your community will choose you. Now, it's really important to remember that community is strongest when members play a role. So if you have a Facebook group, if you are trying to build community, trying to build connections, if you had a party and you organised everything, it still might be a nice party. But if you arrange a party or arrange a community and you say, could you do the invites and could you bring the food and somebody else will do the music, everyone feels more invested. So think about how you can bring people that you know along to this party and get them involved, because people are going to enjoy it much more if they're more involved. And like Anne, while you were touching on, location is everything, like where you bring people together. Now, Facebook groups are a great place to build community. However, the algorithm, the way that people are showing your content, you have no control over. It's a third-party platform. So there's things around Facebook groups that I don't like. But the difficulty is community building and connecting and having an engaged Facebook group relies on people forming the habit. So Kajabi, for example, has a space to build community, but my community members are not in the habit of going into Kajabi to check it, going into the membership area. They're not in that habit. And so a Facebook group, for example, a lot of people are in the habit of using Facebook, although I think people are falling out of love with Facebook, or some people are. So you need to think about where your audience are. Now, if your audience are on Facebook, then that's a fabulous place to build community. It just depends where your audience are and what you want to achieve. So different places where you can build community. You can build a newsletter community, send out a regular letter. Like with my community, we have a newsletter that goes out 6:30 every Wednesday without fail. And people get to know that. It highlights members of the community. It tells you about things that are coming up, etc., etc. So it's a really good way to build relationships. And it's also a good way for people to get to know me better. And that goes out to a much bigger list than just people in the community. So it's a really good place to build those relationships and maybe get new members in the future. Podcast has spoken about that quite a few times. A Facebook group as well, as we've spoken about, Zooms and the membership sites. There's always different places to build community. There are other platforms, there's all kinds of different platforms, but these platforms are only as good as the fact that if you get your people. So Circle, for example, I've never used it. Apparently it's brilliant for community building, but I don't go on it. So are my people going to be going on there? Probably not. So yes, there are all the different places. Okay, thank you. Thank you for your questions. And I hope that answered some of your questions about starting a community, Louise. Thank you for recommending the topic. And yeah, so that is me done. I think done for 2021, I reckon. We're going to move on in a moment to Steve, who's going to do a very good, thank you, Anwar. He's going to tell us a little bit more in a moment. I'm going to give you a little bit of an intro to Steve. Clubhouse, if you've got your questions, I've just got time to answer them. Clubhouse, again, is like Zoom in terms of its conversations in real time. It can be a great place to build community, yes. I mean, I spent some time on it back in the summer and then got tired of it, to be honest. But if you're an expert, you can go onto Clubhouse and you can start building relationships, because at the end of the day, community is about building relationships and building connections, and it can mean so many different things. So yeah, again, Clubhouse, again, you can use Clubhouse as well. It's just another space. And if your people are on Clubhouse, that's a brilliant place to start building relationships. And then you can move them off there somewhere else. Maybe you move them off there and say, I'm going to create a Zoom meetup for people who are interested to learn more about whatever topic you're talking about. And then you could build your own list outside of Clubhouse and then start meeting people there. So we only have an hour. It's like I could go into so many things. I'm just so much. How do you create a podcast? So okay. That's a good question, Narina. And I have a whole course on how to create a podcast. But in essence, you need to record some audio and get it uploaded to the sites. You have to have a host, and then you get it sent out to the directories like Spotify and Apple and all the rest of it. So I think I did a presentation on podcast. Maybe I'll do one next year again, if you'd like one on podcasting. Yay, Louise, I'm glad it was good. I'm glad you got a base to start a community. There's so much to tell you. It's like I've been doing this for so many years, and I try and get it into like a tiny little bit. Thank you, Rosemary. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Okay, we'll do podcasts next year then, Marina, or next week, depending if I get called in again. What are the technicals to retain people in your community? How do I retain people? I retain people. I mean, again, there's so many different things I do, but basically people want to be seen and heard, and they want to be engaged. So I retain people by always giving people an opportunity to speak and express themselves, highlighting people. I regularly highlight people. Adding value, all kinds of things like that. So yeah, I retain people. I mean, my retention rate is super high, but it takes time, and I could do a whole course about how to retain people. But basically, think about why you do what you do and why you don't do things that you should do. Like, apply the psychology to yourself, to others. So if you're part of something and you feel like you're going to miss out if you leave, that retains people as well. So yeah, I do think Saturday School's continuing next year. I think I saw myself on some dates that my name's been put down on for some dates, so I definitely think it is. I haven't heard otherwise, Anwar. Yeah, communities do have similar traits to the sales process, Edward. So yeah, it is. It's about building trust and relationships, and there's so many different ways that you can do it. And if I was with you individually, I'd look at what you were trying to do individually, and then I would say, okay, this is the best way to do it, because it's different for every single person, depending on what you're trying to do. So